Hey everyone, and welcome to episode number 28 of the Australian Rock Show. My name is Dennis Gray from the Rockin' and Rollin' Gray Brothers. Today is Friday, the 17th of July, 2015, when this show is being recorded. Back in 1997, songstress Sherry Rich, with a band comprised of Wilco members Jay Bennett, John Sturratt and Ken Coomer, released one of the classiest albums to ever come out of Australia, titled Sherry Rich and Courtesy Move. Back then, I named it my album of the year, and rightly so. Heartfelt songwriting, smooth vocals, superb musicians and tunes drenched in melody, which, when combined, produced one incredible country rock album. Yesterday, Sherry joined us on the phone and shared with us her memories of writing and indeed recording this album. But before we look over the songs with Sherry, let's get in the mood with the first track from the album. Here is Polite Kisses. Sherry, welcome to the Australian Rock Show.
I'm glad to be here, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Look, on this episode we have your Sherry Rich and Courtesy Move album under the spotlight, released back in 1997 and still sounding amazing. It's one of my all-time favourite albums, and I'm still astounded that more people are not aware of it. It's my hope that via tonight's show we can turn many new listeners onto this album and indeed some of your other material. Now, the guys who recorded this album with you, Courtesy Move, were in fact Wilco members John Sturratt, Jay Bennett and Ken Coomer, who'd formed Courtesy Move, I believe, as an early Wilco side project. If we can drift back to late 1996, when you flew to the USA to record this album, what was your mindset like? And I guess I'm meaning you'd recorded two strong EPs here in Australia, which did okay, but were you confident about what lay ahead? And I'm referring to the songs you had in the works and what the Wilco boys could do with them.
Well, I remember I had worked for a long time on the songwriting for that album, and I'd culled it down to 15 songs. Mm-hmm. And I was obviously very excited. It was the first time I'd been to America, and I was a huge fan of Wilco and the work that they had done. So I was really psyched to go over there, and I think I got there just before Christmas. So arriving in Nashville with all those houses in the snow and decked out in all the wreaths and the Christmas lights was really, a terrific experience. And I guess I was a little bit nervous. I went over by myself. I didn't have a manager or anything with me. And I remember the guys saying, "Wow, you're here by yourself. It's that's really something else." Because I guess they just always expect, you've got to have your manager or whatever traveling with you. But I was fairly determined to let them have input into the way the songs ended up being, because I knew that they were professionals and I liked what they'd done before. So I thought, well, I'll take their lead. I'm not going to go in there and sort of thump the table and say, I want it like this. Yeah. So
the collaboration with those guys, from memory, you gave your publisher a couple of names of bands you'd expressed a desire to work with. He approached Wilco, they liked your album demos and were on board. Was it as simple as that?
It was as simple as that.
Okay.
My publisher was American and he was on a trip over there, and I said to him, well, if you run into anybody from Wilco, or I gave him a list of bands I liked. And another band was the Jayhawks, correct? Yes.
That would have been an interesting collaboration.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I was a big fan of the Jayhawks as well, and as well as Uncle Tupelo.
We kicked off the show tonight with a rollicking album opener, Polite Kisses, written by yourself and Jay Bennett. Great way to start the album, by the way. From memory, it was the second single released too. I really love the piano solo on that song. Was that Jay playing that?
Yes, it was.
He was such a talent, a multi-instrumentalist in every sense of the word.
Yeah, he really was a wild man in the studio and had tons of energy, and I just remember staying up, all night. He was, I guess, I've read that about Keith Richards as well, just go until he dropped, and working all through the night, and he really worked tirelessly on that album. He really threw himself into it.
Okay, well, next track, Is That All You Wanted? This, from memory, was the first single lifted off the album, and it's great. Nice acoustic guitar intro, nice chorus, and in my opinion, no reason why this shouldn't have climbed the charts. This was written by yourself and Garth Porter, correct?
Yeah, mostly by me.
Okay. Okay, so you obviously demoed that before you left Australia. Was the finished song what you'd had in mind when you'd originally penned it with Garth Porter?
No, from memory, I think Garth Porter, he changed it into more of that sort of, he wanted to give it that Dylan-y kind of feeling, and he wrote the middle section, the "If I knew then what I know now," and he wrote that part, yeah.
Sherry, how many songs did you end up writing with Garth Porter?
I think 3 or 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Originally, he was going to produce this album, wasn't he?
He was, and but then it all got a bit mixed up, and
okay,
I looked further afield, and no, it didn't happen.
Personally speaking, and I say this with no disrespect to Garth, but having yourself and Jay Bennett produce the album gave it a far more gutsy rock and roll feel than what he would have done, and no track is more evident of that than the next one, and I'm referring to the song "Three-Time Loser." It smokes. Really love your vocals on the chorus here too. The guitar work is also amazing, and the band sound really, really tight. You wrote the lyrics to this one, didn't you, Sherry? Can you recall how this one came about?
Three-Time Loser. Well,
Three-Time Loser.
I think it's pretty obviously about a doomed romance, and wondering why you keep going back for punishment from the same relationship.
Sure. Well, I've been listening to your music for over 25 years now, and I think that this is one of the best tunes you've written. Enough of my talking. Here is the wonderful Three-Time Loser. Sherry Rich and Courtesy Move there with Three-Time Loser, lifted off their self-titled album from 1997. Who's That Girl is up next, and a collaborative songwriting effort from Jay, yourself, Ken and John. This was originally an acoustic tune of yours, correct? But I believe the band heavied it up somewhat. Any memories on this one, Sherry?
I remember the opening, that sort of really crunchy guitar that Jay did to open up the track, and they really sort of slowed it down and turned it into a bigger rock song than was on my original demo. I don't think that they contributed any lyrics to that song. I gave those guys songwriting credit on a lot of those tunes, mostly because I felt that it was a real true collaboration in the studio for the music. Nice. And for their input into the sound. So that's why.
Sherry, was there ever any talk of having Courtesy Move join you on an Australian tour?
No, because they were well and truly, deep in Wilco world and touring a lot in the US and Europe, as they, still are, although John Sturrat's the only one still in the band.
Sure.
So we could never make that happen. We did get together at and played a few shows at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, when the album was released, and that was really fun. It was awesome. Yeah, I wish we could have done a tour in Australia, but no, didn't pan out.
Okay, next up is the tune Lonely Boy with the borrowed riff from Mr. Tambourine Man. This was written, I assume, whilst you were still in Australia, another Garth Porter collaboration with help from Paul Kelly, correct?
Oh, yeah, I guess I started it with Garth Porter, and then it didn't feel like it was anything finished, so I took it to Paul Kelly, and he added his input as well, so, yeah, three-way. And
it sounds great. Let's hear Lonely Boy now. Sherry, the tune When I See You Tonight, was that something you'd written which you'd penned once again before heading to the US, or something which you and Jay came up with?
I'd written all of these songs in Australia well before I went over there. Like I said, I think when I was there, recording that album, I actually wrote a song called Lovely to Meet You, which is on the Grapes album.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I recorded that when I'd finished working with Jay and John and Ken, and they'd gone home, and I was still in Nashville, and I recorded that at a studio there.
Well, before we play this one, I've got to ask you, as a musician, what did you take away after working with someone like Jay Bennett?
Well, I guess his work ethic, the way he just, like I said before, totally consumed himself in the music and the songs and just the project. He was really committed and really into it. and I guess I'd always before then taken the studio a bit lightly. But since then, I think of him when I'm in the studio, and I try to take on that attitude.
Nice. Well, this is a lovely song. Let's hear When I See You Tonight. Sherry Rich and Courtesy Move there with the tune When I See You Tonight. Now, along with Three-Time Loser, we come to my favourite song off the album, Two White Dogs. For the first time in a long time, I feel free. Just two white dogs, the open road and me. What a song. Love it, love it, love it. Before we play this, can I get you to intro it with a little background info, please?
Yeah, well, those two white dogs, Tex and Lester, belong to my brother.
Huh.
And when I wrote it, I was, pretty carefree, single girl. Just, I think I was just sort of couch surfing at that time and just had my guitar and one trunk of possessions and some clothes, and I really did feel like I was free, and I think I was about to go to America, and I felt like I had the world at my feet and going my way.
Two white dogs there. Did Mick Thomas from Weddings Parties Anything have a hand in that tune as well?
Yeah, he did. Again, I have to be honest with most of the collaborations on this album. I did have the songs 80% finished before I met up with any of those guys.
Okay.
So Mick Thomas definitely helped to polish it up and add a few lyrics, but most of it was already done before I worked with him. But he was he was a lot of fun to write with, and we did come up with a few other songs that he recorded on his albums.
Okay, and as you just mentioned, you played with Wilco live a few times, didn't you? You mentioned South by Southwest in Austin, also the House of Blues in Chicago. What were those gigs like?
The House of Blues in Chicago was just with the guy who was their other multi-instrumentalist at the time, who was a pedal steel player. That wasn't with the full band, it was just me and him, but it was, amazing. We were opening up for some big jam band at the House of Blues, which is just the most beautiful old golden theatre, like a really historic, beautiful place. So that was, a lot of fun.
And you went down well at the South by Southwest in Austin?
Yeah, it was, my memories of that were, I remember getting there for sound check, and there was an Australian guy who was doing my sound, and the PA at this venue was just absolutely in pieces. It was just not working, and it was really, it felt like the gig wasn't going to happen. And this sound guy, I just remember how he worked for 3 hours solid to get it happening, and miraculously got it together before the gig. And I think, there was a star-studded crowd. There was people from Sonic Youth and NRBQ, who are this pretty famous Nashville jam band, Billy Bragg. There was a lot of people in the audience, and it was a hoot. A lot of fun.
You knocked them dead.
Yeah.
Well, back then, one reviewer called your pairing with Courtesy Move, and I quote, a landmark collaboration on par with that of Linda Ronstadt and the fledgling Eagles. That's high praise, but pretty accurate in my opinion. Let's have a look at a couple more tracks on this record before we close out. What's next? The Badfinger cover, I'll Be the One. Was that one of Jay's suggestions or yours?
I think it was one of mine. I never really felt like that song worked very well. I used to play it live after the album came out. And, I sort of dropped it out of my live set because I never felt like
really?
I
I think the opposite. And this tune, as I just mentioned, was written by Welsh outfit Badfinger back in 1971. A song which I think came from a shelved Badfinger record called Sing for the Song. So not a lot of people have still heard that material. And as a side note, I've read that back in 1971, many people thought that this song was too country to have appeared on Badfinger's Straight Up album from that time period. But personally, I think it sounds superb here on your album. I think it's found a home, so let's hear it. Sounding superb there, that was Sherry Rich and Courtesy Move running through the long-lost Badfinger tune, I'll Be the One. Sherry, back in the late 90s, you played shows in Nashville, Florida, Toronto, New York, Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, also Paris from memory. Does one particular gig stand out?
Well, I actually did a whole French tour. Yeah, I did a tour all around France with Rick Plant, who's now my husband, and that was a lot of fun. I just remember playing those crazy French cafes with everybody smoking, and it's just like
wow.
full on smoke. You don't get that anymore. I remember playing at a place called Sharky's, and it was supposed to be an Australian surf bar, and it was like in inland France, in the middle of nowhere, in the country,
wow.
France.
What about in the US? Where did you develop your strongest following, do you think?
Probably in Nashville. That's where I played the most. I didn't really do a lot of touring in the US. I played a couple of really fun shows in New York at the Bottom Line one New Year's Eve. Rick and I opened up for Buddy and Julie Miller, and that was a lot of good times. And I remember playing another bar in New York, which was run by that producer who produced the Bottle Rockets and a lot of those bands. Can't remember his name now, but I remember getting there, and the only light was this naked light bulb, like hanging on a lead down, like sort of right above my head. That was the stage lighting, and in the middle of the set, that blew, the light bulb popped.
We are winding down, and the track which we're going to close out with tonight is Beautiful, Talented and Dead, written after Cobain's suicide. This version on the album was a reworked version of the tune which originally appeared on your first EP from 1994, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think it's one of the most powerful songs which you've written, and with lyrics like all that money, all that fame, all those flowers on his grave, and also number one with a bullet in the head. You captured the shock which many people felt at that time. Did those lyrics and song structure come quickly to you?
Yeah, it really did. I remember writing that in, just a couple of hours in one afternoon. And it was, literally just a couple of days after he died and around my birthday. And it was one of the songs that just came really quickly and was the first of my songs that got a lot of airplay and a lot of recognition in Australia, which was really terrific.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, finally, off the top of your head, can you name one or two songs which you've written over the years which are your personal standouts? And I'm meaning songs that you are most proud of.
Well, I guess Beautiful, Talented and Dead is one of them. I really like Pandora Mink, which is off my latest album.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the songs on the first Grapes record, I think, are personal favourites of mine, ones that I wrote with Ashley Naylor and ones that I wrote by myself. I really like Lovely to Meet You and Marmalade.
Well, a lot of those, we could do a whole episode on that album too, but personally I think If Only You Knew from the Girl Monster Days, reworked as Step Inside and included on the Grapes album Western Sun, for me that is one of your very best. Sherry, thank you so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate you sharing your memories of writing and recording the Sherry Rich and Courtesy Move album. It's been really lovely to talk with you. What are your plans for the rest of 2015? I see you are gigging with Ash Naylor in the Grapes still. Yep,
we still do the occasional show. He's so busy though, but we do duo shows, and then we do some full band shows with the Grapes. We did one last night. It was a ripper. Rick and I are doing a fair few duo shows in Melbourne and up in Brisbane soon.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That sounds interesting. What's the set comprised of?
Well, it's pretty much my songs from all eras, and then a sprinkling of really killer covers. And Rick's got some great, country American rootsy covers that he does really well, like Tulsa Time and, Sweet Home Alabama and some Taj Mahal and more obscure blues stuff.
Nice. Well, that's something to look out for. Sherry, thanks again for your time tonight. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dennis. And I do want to let you know that when I play that song, If Only You Knew, or what's it called now? Step Inside.
Step Inside.
I do think of you, and it probably would not have turned into a recorded song if it wasn't for you hounding me for so many years. So thank you.
It's I just know a good song when I hear it, and
it's a classic.
Thanks again.
Bye.